How are you?
I'm good. How are you, Gordon?
Doing well.
Okay, and we are ready to go. I don't have any attendees right now, but we are live.
Great. Well, we'll go ahead and get started. And usually we have a pretty large group. So here's one, but good morning, good afternoon, everyone. It's afternoon now.
Yeah.
Welcome to our Estes Park conversation. I'm Laramie County Commissioner Jody Shag McNally from District 3, which covers Estes Park and this is part of the district, but I voted on and served the entire county, but Estes Park and the Estes Valley have a very special place in my heart. Today I have some wonderful special guests. I'll introduce them quick, and then Mayor Wendy and I will give an update. But first, I'd like to welcome back, who always comes to our community conversation, Mayor Wendy Koenig. We appreciate so much her participation and her input and the updates she gives us. And welcome, Wendy. I'm really glad you're here today. And with us today, very excited to have District Attorney for the 8th Judicial District, Gordon McLaughlin, and he's going to provide us an update. He's been doing a lot of great work here in the county, and I just want to give everybody an update on how the county commissioners and the DA's office work and how they connect and collaborate on some things with programs and budgets. And from our public information office, Austin Harville is running and helping us maintain this webinar. So thank you for coming. Mayor Wendy, I'll just let you start with some updates, and then we can start my updates, and then we'll turn it over to Gordon. Thank you.
Well, our town board is going to meet one more time virtually, and then hopefully be back to in-person meetings in March. Our next meeting is this coming Tuesday, and we'll have a study session that begins a little early. There's a lot on it at 4:45, and I think individuals will find it interesting to sit in. We're going to discuss a lot of agenda items. The facilities master plan and the final draft is probably something that will create quite a bit of interest. And then on at 7 o'clock, we start our town board meeting. So please attend, and we will be taking virtual comments at the town board meeting, but not at the study session. So if you have something about the study session you want, please email us at wkoenig@estes.org or trustees@estes.org. And I'm not going to talk long because I'm interested in what Gordon McLaughlin has for us today. You're on the spot.
Great, thanks, Wendy. I'll just do a really quick update. Just to let everybody know, I was in Washington, D.C. the last week for the National Association of Counties Legislative Conference, which we had visits in person from the president and the department. Let's see, Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg and some other folks. We were doing a lot of work with land. I'm on the Environment, Energy, and Land Use Subcommittee, and so we had some resolutions and some meetings to vote on, and so that's a lot of work there. There's some things that impact Colorado and our region called the Waters of the United States, which is this big document and definitions, which I've learned a lot more about from the last week. And I can share another time the details there. Also went to look for broadband funding. As you know, we're trying to, as a county, have a strategic goal and objective to try to get all this broadband connected in the middle mile and home. They call it fiber to the premise, FTTP. You might see that acronym, and seeing what we can do. We have to get some extra grant funding and look for some of these buckets of infrastructure money because we have a plan. We know where the underserved areas are, what speeds they are, and we'd like to be the most connected county in the state, if not the region, if not even bigger. And we have a great plan. I was carrying it with me everywhere, and everyone's like, wow, you guys are way ahead. You have some great stuff here. And so I did a lot of networking and talking to some of those folks who are in charge of that, because we're applying for a grant actually this week, which is really important, would help us inch toward with pockets of funding at $20 and $30 million a pop. Hopefully we can get some of these. So with that, I could talk about a lot of things we're doing. We're ARPA funding, and one big announcement is our county manager has announced her retirement in 60 days. It's actually about 45 days or less now. And so we'll be adding that to our process of doing a large search for a new county manager. It's a very important position, and there'll be some public input and process with that. So look for that in the weeks ahead, but it's coming up quick, and we imagine it will be a several month process. City of Fort Collins just announced their 9 finalists, and that took them probably 8 months to get there. So we too will be very diligent in our search. So with that, we'll take some questions at the end, but I want to just turn this over to our great District Attorney, Gordon McLaughlin, a great colleague to work with. I know he's doing some really great programs and changes. And Gordon, I just really appreciate your time being here today. And I'll just turn it over to you for your updates. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Jody. I appreciate that. It's the fact we're doing this virtually reminds me that we're still in COVID, and this week actually the trials are opening back up here in Laramie, Jackson County. So for those that may not know, I'm the district attorney for the 8th Judicial District, which is both Laramie and Jackson counties. And we unfortunately had to shut trials back down right at the beginning of January because of the Omicron wave. But starting maybe it was yesterday, trial calendar is back open. So we'll be getting back to work with that. Our office, of course, has been open the whole time, and we've been working to resolve cases and support victims and investigate crimes and do everything we need to do to make sure that all our ducks are in a row and those things start back up. And dockets and so forth have been going full steam, motions hearings, preliminary hearings, everything else. So we've been busy here in the interim, but always good to see trials open back up, because that means we can bring in community members and actually resolve tough cases and big cases and serious cases and try to get just results for victims and keep the community safe. So we're excited about that. Last year was a COVID shortened year trial wise, but we were still able to try about 70 jury trials, which is less than a normal year, but pretty good considering the COVID headaches that we were experiencing and the shutdowns that we were experiencing as well. And we made about 49,000 separate victim communications last year, and that included about 4,500 different victims of domestic violence. So we really see a lot coming into our office still. We prosecute somewhere in the range of 13,000 crimes a year. And so while this is a great community and a safe community overall, crime is pervasive in certain areas, and we're working to tamp that down. One of the big things we've seen pop up in the last year or so with the pandemic is fentanyl. Fentanyl has been a huge problem nationwide, statewide, and it absolutely impacts us here in Laramie County as well. And part of that's because we're on I-25, but part of it is just because it is everywhere these days. And so we actually just brought on a new prosecutor with some help from the county commissioners, including Commissioner Shattuck McNally, to concentrate on a few areas. One of them being this sort of pandemic spurred fentanyl surge that we have. I'm on the board of the Northern Colorado Drug Task Force, which is a collaborative group of law enforcement, mainly in Laramie County, that works to target large scale drug trafficking operations. And the numbers of seizures of fentanyl, and also concerningly guns used in the distribution of weapons, has been really staggering over the last year. It's really been exponential growth specifically in those categories. And so we're looking forward to having some more resources so that we can really prosecute those crimes. Some of those are very complex. The Northern Colorado Drug Task Force engages in wiretap investigations and other investigations of these organizations that take going from one person to the next, that take reviewing an incredible amount of data and discovery and other evidence to put these cases together, to piece them together, and to make sure we're holding the most serious offenders accountable. Because my view is that when we're looking at someone who's a user of drugs, someone who's suffering from addiction, we need to make sure we're getting those folks treatment and access to resources. But at the other end, we need to stop the people preying on our community by profiting wildly so off bringing drugs into our community. And fentanyl specifically is so dangerous because usually it's sold in pill form. So folks press pills with this fentanyl, and pills can be very disparate in terms of what's in them. So someone may think, I am an addict, but I know what I need. I know what one pill will do to me, but they get a new batch and that one pill could kill them. And so we've seen an increase in overdoses as well. And I know that's an issue that the commissioners and especially Commissioner Sheddick-Nally are very caring about as well. And so obviously we need to address that from a lot of different angles. But the one angle that we can help with in this office is trying to get that fentanyl off the street by prosecuting these large scale dealers. So we're excited to have some more resources for that. A couple Estes specific things that have been on our radar this last year. We had what we call a Cert Investigation, which is a critical incident response team investigation that related to a captain in the Estes Park Police Department with some tragic results. Those obviously unfortunate in a lot of respects does go to show the very professional critical incident response team investigation that we have been able to put together. We've had several of them this year, and I apologize, a train's about to go by here, as folks that work downtown in Fort Collins know. So I'll give it 1 second. Well, this was a quiet one. And so we have these investigations because we believe when we're investigating law enforcement, we need to make sure it's independent and unbiased, and that we are getting a really fair look at this, and that we're treating law enforcement officers when they break the law just like everybody else and holding them accountable and being transparent about that process. So the Laramie County Sheriff's Office led that investigation into Eric Rose, and they put together a very thorough investigation. They talked to many folks in the Estes Park Police Department. They talked to many community members. They talked to neighbors. They talked to medical staff, and they put together a very thorough presentation for us and provided us all of that documentation for us to take a look at it. I then review all that information with my staff, my administration staff, attorneys, and investigators, and try to determine what occurred. In that case, we did determine that Eric Rose had committed some serious felony crimes, some domestic violence crimes, and but for his death, we would have prosecuted him in those crimes. So that's the result that we came to. Obviously, we didn't prosecute anyone because Eric Rose is no longer alive. That being said, that result, I think, is very important to know how thoroughly we will look into these things, leaving no stone unturned, and that we will publish those results to the community. And so obviously with no crime to charge, it would have been easy to say, well, there's no point in looking into it. But there is a point, because trust in law enforcement, trust in the criminal justice system is incredibly important. And so if we're not transparent, if we're not owning up to the mistakes that are made within law enforcement, then we don't deserve the trust of the Estes community or anyone else. So we published that. We published all of our cert letters on our webpage. So you can find that letter that I issued there on our webpage. If you Google Laramie DA, our webpage pops up pretty quick. So that was a thorough investigation that we're proud of. Though of course what instigates those investigations is obviously always very tragic. Another recent Estes event was the park ranger who shot at someone who was fleeing into the park. That was maybe 6-8 weeks ago at this point.
Yes.
The park is federal land, and so we don't actually prosecute crimes that occur in the park. The U.S. attorney based in Denver prosecutes those crimes, but we take anything that's happening in our county incredibly seriously. So we worked very closely with the U.S. Attorney's Office. We had DAs from our office up on scene at that shooting on that day. We also had DAs from our office at the interviews of multiple witnesses there. The defendant, the witnesses, the park ranger who was involved, other officers, and we made sure that we had eyes on that, because we want to be able to tell the community, that this is being done fairly, unbiasedly, professionally. And though it's not our investigation at this point, it's the U.S. attorneys, we do have confidence that they are doing a fair and professional job in that investigation, and that the right results will occur. And we are still have a part in that, because several of the crimes, the alleged crimes, obviously because he's not convicted, but that occurred outside of the park. And so we are prosecuting those crimes that occurred outside the park. The chain of events of eluding started down outside Loveland by the dam store. And so we are prosecuting some of those crimes. He is, of course, innocent until proven guilty, but we're taking that also very seriously, especially given how that ended up with some significant danger to folks there in the Estes community. So we're keeping a close eye on that. And then two big things to update folks on that are in the works. One is we are coming up with a big data collection and transparency project that we're working on with national researchers. The group is called Prosecutor Performance Indicators, and they are going to help us create, well, first collect data on what we're doing. That's things like charging decisions, sentencing arguments, recidivism rates, meaning are folks committing crimes again after they've come through the criminal justice system, where they're also going to look at things like race and ethnicity in the criminal justice system and whether there are disparities in some of those categories. And that's going to help us inform our internal work to see, are we being efficient with our time and our resources, which are, of course, taxpayer dollars, and are we being effective with what we're doing with stopping crime, reducing recidivism, and keeping the community safe. And then we're going to have a public dashboard. So the public's going to be able to see this data. They're going to be able to go to our webpage and see graphs and charts and searchable items to really take a look at what we're doing so that we are transparent with all of the work that we do. We currently have a survey up on our website. Again, if you Google Laramie DA, and that survey is essentially asking you all, hey, what data is most important to you? What do you want to see from our office so that we know where to focus our data collection efforts? And so if folks want to participate in that survey, that'll be helpful. That's the first part. The second part of the survey is, hey, how can we best share this information with you? Is that social media? Is that a town hall like this opportunity here? And how can we best communicate that with you? Because we want to let you know what we're up to. And then another big thing on the horizon is we just launched or just announced the launch of our first Citizens Academy. And so folks may have seen these at some of the law enforcement agencies around town, or even the cities and counties have done some of these. But this will be the first DA Citizens Academy. It's going to be, I believe, a 4-week program. And there's going to be 8 classes where we're going to go through everything right from charging decisions and working with law enforcement through supporting victims during the process, all the way to what it looks like for us preparing a trial and actually presenting that case to a jury. And we'll have a bit of a mock trial opportunity at the end for participants. And this will be a great way, I think, to show people what we do, some of the great work we're doing, some of the resources that we offer to victims and other folks, and really help people understand the criminal justice process. And of course, answer your questions, take your feedback on what we're doing and that support we're providing. That's going to start up in March, but the application process has begun. And the application is again on our website. So if you Google Laramie DA and then go to the community engagement tab, there is an application to be part of that. I know we've already gotten quite a few applications, so we're really excited to engage with folks and show folks what we're doing because that's a really important part of our job as public servants. So that's a bit of an update, and happy to take questions on any of that or other things.
Thank you, District Attorney Gordon McLaughlin. Always great to hear about what you're doing, and I think there's some new additions of what you said from last week when we had this same discussion in Loveland. I'm really excited to hear about the Citizens Academy, and is that on your social media so we can share that out for those applications?
Yeah, it is on my social media, and I can actually probably share a link in the chat to everyone here, so I will do that. But yep, it's on social media, and that's something good to add is that the DA's office is now on Facebook and Twitter at DA8 Colorado. And so you can find us there and learn a lot about what we're doing. That's everything from legislation that we're working on down at the Capitol to cases that we're resolving and sentences that are impactful to the community to just other engagement that we're doing. So please give us a follow there and learn about us. And I will drop the Citizens Academy form, and I'll also drop the survey for our data collection project in the chat to folks here if I can.
Thanks, Gordon. I'm sorry, I didn't think about asking for those links beforehand, but with that being said, Mayor Wendy, do you have any questions for our TA?
Oh, I just want to thank you very much for the objective investigations. It was very emotional with Eric Rose, and it was good to have an outside source investigate that for us. We've also just should get results of an internal investigation too that's being completed now. We just want to be sure we didn't miss anything in any way that we could have avoided what happened. So we appreciate it, and thank you for working with what happened in the park too. We have no control over the park. They are federal, but understanding the impact that things have as people come through Estes Park is very important for the safety of our citizens, and we appreciate your work on that. Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. Estes Park is getting busier by the day, as I know you all know. And so obviously we hope that it remains the same sort of close-knit, safe community, but we're going to be paying attention to stuff, and the person alleged to have committed the crimes in that incident, is not from the Estes community, right? They came in from outside, and so we're all susceptible to that. And so we're going to make sure we keep a close eye on those things. The incident with the ranger did happen just over the park boundary. So that was very close to our jurisdiction, which is one of the reasons we kept a close eye on it. But again, we've had a good partnership with the U.S. Attorney's Office and the FBI that are involved to make sure that that is properly handled. And for folks to understand maybe the difference between the review we did of the Eric Rose situation and the review that Estes is doing, they're both very valid and very equally important reviews. The review we do for folks' edification is a criminal review. So we're looking to see if any crimes are committed, whether that's by Eric Rose, and we did determine there were crimes committed by him, or by anyone else. So we look at all actors involved. And if we had believed that crimes were committed by, for instance, other officers or other citizens, whether that was covering anything up or otherwise, that constituted criminal behavior, we also would have pursued that. And so we did not find that. That being said, the internal review that Estes is doing, I think, is also incredibly beneficial, because that's looking at things that we can do as a community, whether it's Estes Police Department or this would apply to any of us in any community. Hey, how can we get better? How can we make sure we're uncovering these things? How can we train? How can we support better to make sure something like this doesn't happen again? And that's, of course, incredibly important too. So I'm glad to see that that's happening as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Gordon. That's great information. And yes, I know Estes has had a lot it's been dealing with, and I think you said it well, was very emotional for you all. And plus, we have to remember, you just had the Camera Peak fire and the evacuation of the entire town, and then the Kruger fire and the unfortunate accident with the pilot. So I think that, your community has been through a lot. So appreciate the thoroughness and comprehensive investigation by the DA's office to kind of help you have all some peace of mind too as well. So is there any questions from our attendees? Anybody have any questions about anything for any of us, but especially from our district attorney, since he's been so gracious with his time to join us today? You can just put it in the chat or raise your hand and we'll have you ask a question. Don't be shy. We'll be more than happy to entertain any questions. So. Okay, well, we'll just keep chatting, and at any time, if you have a question about any subject for any of us, just raise your hand or just type it in the chat. We'd be more than happy to answer those as we go along. So, Gordon, I thought it was interesting when you talked about the fentanyl and the increase in, and we're seeing just such a huge increase during the pandemic and now of overdoses in such a insidious wave of this dangerous substance. What other, I know we have the opiate settlement, we're looking at some of those monies for addressing some of these issues. What else is on the radar that you guys are really concerned about that's related to this fentanyl crisis, basically?
Yeah, well, I mean, it impacts sort of all corners of our community. Certainly, fentanyl use and addiction of any substance can lead to other crime. And we do see that sometimes. Obviously, we handle all those independently. But I think, again, making sure that those treatment resources are available for people is important. I know that as the county commissioners in the county, there's a lot of efforts they're working on. Here at the DA's office, we're doing a couple things. One is we're making sure that we're really supporting our drug treatment courts. We have a couple great problem-solving courts here in Laramie County, including a DUI court and a drug treatment court. One of the first things I did as DA is assign a prosecutor to those problem-solving court divisions that I know is looking at this with a compassionate lens and a lens to try to see what we can do to rehabilitate people so that they are not committing these same crimes again. Because if we're getting people access to these resources, getting them out of the throes of addiction, then they're not going to commit those same crimes. That means we're lowering recidivism and we're going to keep the community safer. And so he's done an excellent job really bolstering our support for those programs. And so we're going to continue that. We also launched an adult diversion program in October, and that diversion program handles a number of different things, but one of which can be addiction. And diversion programs are trying to get people out of the criminal justice system into resources, with the understanding that the quicker we can get people to resources, the more effective those things may be. And so the diversion is not necessarily focused on someone with long-term addiction that needs, years of treatment, but it is geared towards folks who might need some short-term connections to treatment, resources, accountability, that's going to break this sort of cycle that brought them into the criminal justice system. And so that diversion program has already been really successful. And again, we're getting those folks out of the criminal justice system and then focusing some of our resources elsewhere. But the fentanyl has really replaced or at least supplemented a lot of the other drugs that we've seen coming into our community. Certainly methamphetamine was probably the most serious substance we had previously, and fentanyl has topped that. But again, the most the biggest problem is the overdoses, because people simply don't know how to handle the dosages that they're getting. And so even a long-term user of opioids who thinks they know how to use opioids quote unquote responsibly, because of course it's always very dangerous, don't know what they're getting in any particular pill. It can be different batch to batch. It can be different within the same batch someone is getting, because these are not being made in a laboratory. They're being made with a pill press in someone's basement down in Thornton and brought up here. And so it's incredibly unreliable, incredibly dangerous. And so folks don't know what they're getting into. And so the overdose deaths have increased in Laramie County, specifically related to substance abuse. And it's very scary for a lot of people, very scary for people that have been addicts and been in that community for a long time. And so we're doing our best to stop that from coming in and making sure that folks know they're going to be held accountable for that. We're also working on some legislation down at the Capitol, both myself personally, as well as the Colorado District Attorney's Council that I'm on the board of. We're working on a bill that sort of rectifies the disparity between amounts needed for fentanyl versus other drugs to hold someone accountable at a felony level, with the recognition that, microscopic grains of fentanyl can kill someone. And that's just not true for other drugs, even other dangerous drugs. And so we're trying to remedy the amounts so that they're holding people accountable proportionally to the danger of the substance. And then the second thing we're working on at the Capitol is a bill that helps us hold accountable folks who have dealt drugs and are responsible for someone's death, right? And so, we often hear, well, I'm just providing this to my friend, or I'm just providing it to this group. Well, if you're providing it to your friend and your friend dies as a result of that distribution, that's a crime we need to treat differently. And so we have a bill at the Capitol that is looking at giving us the tools to hold those folks accountable for deaths specifically.
Wow, so a lot going on. So there was a question about, are the fentanyl statistics in Laramie County available online?
I think the answer is no, unfortunately. I can tell you just anecdotally, and I had this number through the third quarter of 2021, in part because I was presenting some of these numbers to the commissioners about this new district attorney spot. But through the first 3 quarters of 2021, the Northern Colorado Drug Task Force seized 130,000 fentanyl pills in Laramie County. So that's just 3 quarters of the year, and that's just the drug task force. That's not all the fentanyl pills that are coming off the street from Estes Police and Fort Collins Police and Loveland Police and everyone else. And again, that's been an exponential rise. So I have not seen any slowdown in that since that third quarter. I just heard some reports just a couple of days ago that, and I forget whether it was Fort Collins or a sheriff, but one of those 2 agencies, just on some routine traffic stops, picked up 2,000 fentanyl pills 2 separate occasions last week.
Goodness.
Again, that means any of those pills potentially could be a lethal dose. So that is potentially up to 2,000 lethal doses of fentanyl seized just on a routine traffic stop. So I don't think those stats are up. That's a great idea. Again, we're trying to share more data and more stats from our office. I know these things are hard to keep track of because they're from varying agencies. One thing that I know does exist is a coroner's report, and the coroner's report does talk about overdose deaths. It's not completely accurate, I think, in the sense that the Northern Colorado Drug Task Force also tracks overdoses, and they track that a little bit differently because sometimes someone might come to the coroner and maybe the official cause of death is a heart attack, for instance, but the Northern Colorado Drug Task Force was out at the scene and they saw, an empty bottle of fentanyl pills next to the person. Well, realistically, that was an overdose death. And so they track those numbers a little bit differently. We're working on how we can communicate some of that information to the community better. So I appreciate the question in that regard. But I know anecdotally that the numbers of overdoses are even higher than the coroner's report. So
I'm going to share in the chat the Laramie County Behavioral Health Data Dashboard, which does show an increase in overdoses. And I do believe we saw, which we've been working very hard, an actual downtick in the suicide rate in the last year and a half or so that we've been really trying to target that. So just wanted to share that, but the drug overdoses and community indicators are on there. So hope that is helpful as well. We have that separate kind of data tracking for there. And there's shows where the kind of the information comes from. So I hope that's helpful as well. And we are trying to, use more data from, sources as we go forward. And I think with this opioid settlement and some of the treatment we're trying to do and see how we can track those numbers. I think there's some measures and metrics we'll be tracking with some of that settlement and some of those programs that we're trying to address this opioid crisis and subsequent fentanyl crisis. I didn't realize that I thought a lot of this was coming from outside of the US, but it actually sounds like it's coming from basements in Denver. How is that with?
Well, that was just an example, but in summary, what happens is that especially when the pandemic hit, the border closed with Mexico, which is where most of our drugs come from in the US. And it sort of threw everyone into chaos about how to keep these very lucrative drug trafficking schemes going. And one of the things that changed was people shifted to fentanyl because it is easier to bring in because such lower quantities get cut up and make these folks so much more money. And so we started seeing fentanyl come in across the border instead of some of the other drugs like methamphetamine or heroin or other things. It comes in a more pure form. And then as it comes across and across and across, it gets cut and cut and cut. And so often the pills may be pressed here locally, but the fentanyl did come from across the border. And so that is often what happens. We've found pill presses here in Laramie County. So it can happen at any stage. And again, that's what makes it so dangerous, because it's not even a sophisticated drug trafficker who might be cutting this and pressing this. It can be anyone redoing it and redoing it, and it just gets more and more unpredictable, which is again leading to the overdoses.
Thank
And,
you.
could I ask a question? Could
Yes,
you
please.
define what, for all of us, what a pill press is and how it operates? Because I don't know.
Yeah, it's, so these fentanyl pills look to, a naked eye, to you or I, like a real pill that came from the pharmacy. They're small and round and smooth and, have little stamps on them, just like a pill you'd get from the pharmacy. And they're made to sort of look like an opioid pill. And obviously we all know the opioid epidemic obviously has really hurt our communities, and people, now that doctors have stopped overprescribing those as much, those are harder to get illegally, and fentanyl has come right in to take its place. And the difference again is that with if it's an Oxycontin pill from the pharmacy, you know exactly what that amount is. Now that's not safe to be taken without a prescription, of course, but
Right.
people did know what it was. With these, they can be anything. But so folks will cut it. So they'll take a very small amount of fentanyl and then other substances, and they will have a machine and literally press the pill, and it solidifies it and hardens it. So it looks like
Looks like it came from the pharmacy.
correct.
Yeah.
Correct. And so, a lot of folks buying drugs on the street, they know it's fake. They know it's not from the pharmacy. But, when they're addicted, that's what's available and that's what they buy.
Thank you for clarifying that.
That's so frightening, so frightening. Well, again, I'll ask, does our two attendees have any other questions? I see they asked them in the line. We just go back and see if there's any other questions that I missed. I don't think so. Great. Well, Gordon, what do you have any questions for the two of us? We've been asking you lots of questions.
Oh boy, I didn't come prepared with questions. I just was prepared to answer them.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, Mayor, what have you seen in Estes in terms of, substances coming in from other places, and whether that's impacted tourism or your local communities, and what you've heard?
I don't have a report from the police department on that, so I really can't comment on it. Don't have it at my desk. So I know that we have issues in Estes Park, just kind of like everywhere else. And it's something that the community works with quite a bit. And our restorative justice program, even alcohol can cause problems in a family. And our restorative justice program is something we utilize to help work with individuals we think, can make a turnaround. And I think that's a very important program that we have. It's a step before they come to you.
Yeah,
It's an important step.
I completely agree, and I'm glad you brought that up. It's Estes, for those that don't know, has a great restorative justice program, and we're trying to expand our restorative justice options here at the DA's office. We actually just hired a terrific new staff member in our diversion department that has a lot of restorative justice experience, and we're hoping that we can, in the future, expand some of our restorative justice services, because right now only folks in the city of Fort Collins and the city of Estes Park have any restorative justice services available to them. So even others in the Estes Valley may not be covered by the city's program. And so we want to make sure that we're given that type of opportunity, as you said, and it might not be before they come to us, but it's they come to us and we divert them to a restorative justice program, dismiss the case, and get them out of the system and into some quick accountability. And so we're trying to make sure that that's going to be available everywhere. And so that's one of the big projects on our radar currently.
I think that's good. It's been in Estes for quite a while now, and it's very valuable. And I like it because particularly younger people make a mistake. because they are young, it gives them an opportunity to give back to the community and move forward with their lives. So I think it's very important. So.
Well, unless, I'm sure we could talk about a lot of other things, but I also want to honor and value everyone's time. And unless our attendees have some more questions, we can, kind of wrap this up and give it back a little bit of their afternoon lunch hour. But I just want to thank you again, Gordon. It's such a great opportunity to hear from you and hear about some of the changes and programs and the opportunities that you're creating with the office and the work that you're doing. Because I think for a lot of people, they don't realize the scope and the comprehensive programs that the district attorney's office is implementing and what, what you're up to. So I think it's great because I think people only hear about when you make the news, when you're charging someone, and there's just so much more to it and the work that you're trying to do to be more upstream and help people, with the diversion program is just really important. So I want to just thank you for your time today. And Mayor Wendy, as always, we're going to attempt to be in person next month.
That would be great.
And we're going to bring, and everyone's welcome, including the district attorney if he wants to come. And we're going to try to have some, working on a hybrid option, but we're going to try to be in person in Estes. And we're going to bring up our Office of Emergency Management and our, hopefully someone from our Laramie County Emergency Telephone Authority. And hopefully, in addition to the CSU extension that has some great resources for emergency preparedness. And we're going to talk about the uniqueness of the partnerships and the program that Laramie County is doing for emergency responses and how we notify folks about emergencies, especially after the Marshall Fire. There's been a lot of questions from a lot of folks. Well, what do we have in place and how does this work? Even after the Cameron Peak Fire, I think it's always great to update folks what we have, what we're doing. And then also just the point of, this is a partnership and that people need to understand how they need to become prepared and be engaged citizens and know, or residents, excuse me, that you have to sign up for these alerts and opt in and what you need to know that there is an emergency or heaven forbid another fire, which is I think a when, but if not if, and how you can prepare and watch and monitor those conditions. So I'm hoping to bring some resources. We have an outstanding and phenomenal Office of Emergency Management. We just updated and voted in a new comprehensive emergency management plan with all of our partners. I believe Estes Park is also signed off for a partner or some of the fire districts. So it is really a huge document. It's like a folder about this thick and very important. And I just want to make sure folks have the information and know the extensive work that all the partners have worked behind the scenes to get to that point. And we're constantly evaluating, preparing, and planning for those every year. It never stops. And so that's something I want folks to understand the work that goes behind that and how they can educate and prepare themselves. So that will be in March. Look for some more details coming soon. Staff are working on that. I'm looking forward to being up in Estes for that. And with that,
location maybe.
I think I haven't confirmed. I think it was confirmed, but I think I'm going to wait. I think we're going to try to either. I'm not sure Austin's on the line, but I think we're trying to do it either at the library or somewhere at maybe a community building. But
well, if you need something, let me know.
That's correct. It is at the library for right now.
Perfect.
We haven't had any issues with that yet.
Okay, great.
Perfect.
So,
thank you.
I wasn't sure. I knew it was one of those, but I didn't want to, just want to make sure we had confirmed all those before I set a location. So, and I want to just thank again, Mayor Koenig and District Attorney Greg McLaughlin for your time today. It's really a pleasure. And it's really an honor to work alongside you and in collaboration with all these different areas in our county and how we can, when we work together, we can do great things for our residents. And thank you for the
wonderful outreach. Thank you.
Yeah. And thanks for the attendees. Yeah, go ahead.
No, just thank you, Commissioner, and thank you, Mayor. It's great to be here, and I appreciate the chance.
And thanks to our attendees. I hope that you'll share this information with your friends and neighbors and let them know about our next opportunity and that we're going to try to be in person. That's one thing about being in DC the last week. Things are still masked there, and it was a little, which I applaud that, but they actually have or even ordering a coffee, you go into a restaurant or any of those coffee shops or restaurants, you have to show an ID and your vaccine card and be masked. And so it is interesting how different counties and communities around the country have been handling this. And so I've had a lot of conversations with that, but I think that they're headed to changing those requirements here in the next few weeks. So it's just been interesting to talk and have those conversations with other leaders from across the country. So anyway, thank you all. I wish you well. Stay safe and warm today. And until next time, we'll see you all soon. Take care. Thanks, Gordon.
Thank you.
Thanks, Austin.